guys, welcome back to another review. So basically this video and the next couple of videos are me reviewing things that I saw back in January. I just haven't gotten a chance to jump in front of the camera and review them. Just one little update I want to share with you guys and before I get into the actual review is one, there have been some little changes to my Patreon. I have a kind of documentary, poorly done documentary, I will say, video coming to my Patreon which is exclusive to all tiers on my Patreon starting at $1 and up, and that is my basically video of how Are You a Movie Oracle is made, where I take you step by step through the process that I go through to bring you an episode of my movie trivia game show series. Also, there are two exclusive series that are coming to my Patreon. One is my Oracle React series, will now exclusively be on Patreon. That will also be available to tier 1 patrons and up, so again that's $1 and up. And also there's a new series that I'm doing, which is What I Watched This Week, where I recap and discuss all the things I watch each week. I'm really looking forward to doing that simply because there are a lot of things that I watch, whether it be television, films, or you know, even going to a show or a concert, and I don't talk about them on my channel. So it'll be nice to actually be able to discuss those and kind of just show just how many things I watch in my day-to-day life. That series will be coming to my Patreon this week. That will be the first episode dropping, and that will be for tier 3 patrons and up. So those are my Patreon updates. There is a link to my Patreon in the description box. You will also find it attached to my main channel page. If you are interested in checking it out, by all means click it. It's not mandatory. It even feels weird saying it and saying that I have a Patreon. If you want to support me and support my channel, then you can check it out and maybe consider becoming a patron. If not, that is perfectly fine. You don't have to do that to support me. Just you watching this video is support enough, and I thank you so much for that. Now that I have done that, let's get into today's review. Bombshell is a 2019 American biographical comedy drama film directed by Jay Roach and written by Charles Randolph. The film is based upon the accounts of several women at Fox News who set out to expose CEO Roger Ailes for sexual harassment. I expected a lot from this movie, given the subject matter and a lot of praise I had seen given to it. I was prepared to be flawed, and that was not the case. I did not enjoy this film at all. Now, this isn't the type of film that is meant to be enjoyed in the traditional sense, as it is a film with a message, but I don't feel the message was powerful. I felt the majority of the film was boring, and it didn't do a very good job at making me feel as though I had stepped into the lives of the women at Fox News. I have spoken about my experiences with sexual harassment and assault, so I'm a very sympathetic person on the matter, but even with that, outside of 2 scenes, this film didn't make me feel anything. The performances in this film are standout, especially Charlize Theron. The level of detail put into her portrayal of Megyn Kelly shows how much she must have studied her to get it right. She had the posture, she moved just like her, she managed to alter her voice so she could get the perfect Megyn Kelly cadence. Now, she didn't always hold it, but when it was there, it was spot on. The makeup department for this film deserves huge accolades for what they achieved. They did such subtle things, but these small changes to our actors made a huge difference. They gave Theron the range of Megyn Kelly's hair and got that spot on. They altered her eyes to give her a hooded eye, which Theron does not naturally have. Put them all together and she became Megyn Kelly. Hair and makeup altered to make Nicole Kidman look like Gretchen Carlson was not as spot on as with Kelly, but they still did good work, and it was more than clear they had given her a larger bust. The prosthetic work on John Lithgow to make him look like Roger Ailes was fantastic. It was so seamless. I really could not find a fault in the work done to transform him into Ailes, but with him, what really pulled it together was the performance. Accents were not everyone's strong suits in this film. I've had this problem with Margot Robbie's other films. She can do an accent, but she can't hold it. Soon her Australian accent comes through and it stands out. The only time I found her to be flawless in her vocal acting was in I, Tonya, where she nailed every aspect of the character, factoring in age and decades of smoking. But in this, I wasn't sure what she was going for. She sounded American, then had a spontaneous southern twang, and then would morph morph into Australian, it struck the ears in an unpleasant way and pulled me out of what would have otherwise been a solid performance. As much as I love Nicole Kidman, accents aren't always her strength either. I've seen accent coaches point out how in numerous films or shows she would pronounce things as an Australian, and that would often happen in this performance too. I guess the Aussie accent is a bitch to fight. Fortunately, when it came to portrayals of the Murdochs, this wasn't a problem. Rupert Murdoch is Australian, and so his family have grown up in Australia, so casting Australian actors to play Lachlan and James meant they sounded accurate. But Malcolm McDowell, who was a Brit doing an Australian accent, just ended up sounding like an American trying to sound like an Aussie, which is never pleasant. Margot Robbie's character, Kayla Pospisil, was the weakest aspect of this film for me. Not the performance, but the character itself. Of our lead characters, she is the one who is not based on a real person. Her character is completely made up, and knowing that explains so much to me because her character just never seemed to fit into the rest of the film. It seemed to do more harm than good. Her scene with John Lithgow is one of the best scenes of the film. It's tense, it's uncomfortable, and it should be, and they nailed it completely, but I don't feel like they had to give a story to the character this was happening to. It wouldn't have mattered who it happened to. They could have done a slow, drawn-out montage of him doing the same thing to multiple women, and it would have had the same impact. To see woman after woman being degraded, humiliated, and violated, and feeling as though they somehow had done something wrong. The scene was necessary, but the character being so fleshed out and included wasn't. Was it necessary to see a made-up character engaging in sex with a female co-worker or going on dates with men to put up appearances? No, it doesn't add anything to the story or what the subject matter is. Who she goes home with is not relevant to the story of what her boss is subjecting women to at his office for the past few decades. Despite this film being about a series of events that were put in motion by Gretchen Carlson, this felt more like a film about Megyn Kelly. I would have liked to see more about what Gretchen went through, what she endured, instead of seeing scenes of Kelly doing the presidential debate, or interviewing Trump, or getting into a Twitter war with Trump. You could do a whole film about that. We know his history with women, but this film was about Fox News and the women of Fox News whose lives were made a living hell by Roger Ailes. So none of that stuff was relevant to me. Getting a few snippets of comments Gretchen put up with from her co-host wasn't enough. I wanted to really get a better understanding of what she put up with for years before she dropped a nuke on this place, and I didn't feel I got that. John Lithgow's portrayal of Roger Ailes was so intricate, and I love how it was done. This wasn't just about showing him as a disgusting human being. If he was just that, how could he have survived so long? They showed all aspects to him, how he knew how to play the media and politics, how he could be sweet and charming, even to people he had a negative history with. He knew how to manipulate people and get what he wanted. He built an empire, and through this depiction we could see how he's the perfect abuser. Abuse someone but give them what they want, something they can't turn down, and suddenly your problems disappear. He was evil but could kill you with kindness, making him this real-life master villain. Now, I think in recent years we've seen better portrayals or better ways of showing what kind of a person he was, like in The Loudest Voice, but I still think this film did a great job of showing us who he was and what he was capable of and what he did. Overall, I was disappointed by this film. I didn't feel much of anything. I only had two scenes I enjoyed, apart from the office scene. One of my favorite scenes was of all these women fielding calls from reporters asking if it's true they're not allowed to wear pants, all while getting dressed in the dressing rooms with outfits designed to make them look slimmer and the breasts to look bigger. And when they ask if they can wear pants, they're told not unless the boss approves it, and that's never going to happen because we saw him going around demanding more leg. That was a fantastic scene which featured Ashley Greene, who I love, so yay. But just seeing all these women being put on display, their bodies sold to the public instead of their minds, and they're not having a say in it. They were not in control of their own bodies. Roger was. He dictated what they wore, how they looked, and they were at his mercy to the point they couldn't even talk about it. Some were lying to save their jobs, others lied because they were programmed not to see their work environment as bad but as normal. Both are equally horrifying. This film had amazing moments, but on the whole, I just wasn't seeing it deliver all that was promised. Even the filming style was confusing. It starts by feeling like a documentary, then it turned into a regular film, then it morphs into something else. It didn't seem to know what it wanted to be or what genre it was in, because it seemed to bounce around on that front too. I also hated all the writing on the screen. I was halfway through the film before I even noticed that there were subtitles indicating who each character was meant to be and their role at Fox News, but all the font was in white and I couldn't read or make any of it out against the backdrop of the scene. I have 20/20 vision and it was impossible to make out the writing half the time, so I often struggled to figure out who each person was and their significance. I wanted to be wowed by this. I wanted to feel like it was a powerful piece on sexual harassment and the horrid bowels of Fox News, but I just ended up more irritated and disappointed by most of the film's choices. Wish I could say I enjoyed it, but I did not like this movie and wouldn't watch it again. I know a lot of people loved it and I think that that's great, and I know the actresses and people involved in it are being recognized at certain awards, and I think that that is also great. I don't think the film itself deserves an award. I've certainly seen a lot of films that discuss a subject matter like this and do it far better. I think that this film, it had a good idea, I just didn't feel like execution was there. It just, yeah, it was just kind of like, wow, for me, which is disappointing because on a matter like this, and one that I can relate to, especially sexual harassment at the workplace, I definitely can relate to that. I expected more on a personal level, not on a film critique level, but as a woman who has experienced that, yeah, I definitely had expected more. But like I said, the two scenes that I liked, which definitely depicted what was going on at that place, I thought was brilliant. They definitely were great. I just wish the whole film could have been about that. I mean, like I said, including the whole thing with Megyn Kelly and Trump it pissed me off. It didn't need to be there. I didn't want it there. This film was not about Trump. He should not have been mentioned at all. We know that he's got his own allegations. We know he's a dick. We get all that. But this film was not about him, and it wasn't even about the shit that he was saying to Megyn Kelly, which, as horrible as that is, Trump and his Twitter, it's like a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum. It's not that severe. I wanted to focus on more serious things, and so yeah, this film just kind of let me down. But that is it for today's review. If you liked it, you can give a thumbs up. If you didn't, you can give it a thumbs down. Those are your options. If you want to see more of my videos, you can subscribe to my channel. That is also your prerogative. Or you can comment down below and tell me what you thought of Bombshell if you have seen it. If you haven't seen it, comment down below and tell me why you haven't seen it. Both of those I would be interested to learn about. As always, thank you to my awesome patrons. I love your support, and I hope you like the content that is coming to you pretty much this week. But until then, I am off, so bye guys!